Today I'm going to talk about building a personal meditation practice and where people go wrong and why so often meditation practices fail, they don't endure. And there's a famous saying amongst Zen meditators or Chan school meditators. In the monastery, the monks are kind of watch newcomers come in, and they observe them and see how they're practicing, and they kind of take bets on how long they're going to last. And a saying evolved that goes like this: old hand's cultivation the first year, a beginner's cultivation the second year, and no cultivation at all the third year. And this means simply that a person, and I observed this many times myself, that's very gung-ho to meditate and really put a lot of effort in it at the beginning when he first arrives. You can just look at your watch and say, he's not going to last long. But then you have some really timid person that thinks, well, I don't know if I can really do this meditation. Maybe I'll stay out of the Buddha hall for a while and just work in the garden or on the farm, help the monks clean up the temple and things like that. Then when you see that person, you kind of think, wow, he's going to be around for a long, long time and eventually maybe become a great meditator himself. And then the one who initially came and he was all gung-ho, he's out the door after months and at the most a year or two. And he never comes back, and that's the sad part. He really gives up. And he would have been better off not starting at all, because of course he has a negative view towards meditation. It's all because he tried too hard in the beginning, where he had too big an ego involved. He thought he was going to conquer meditation. But meditation is not about conquering anything. It's about surrendering to your own shortcomings and faults and obstacles and things and afflictions, and learning how to see yourself as you really are, as this really obstructed person and a long ways from enlightenment. If you understand that much, then you can endure for a long, long time, a lifetime. So today's talk is about how to build a personal practice, one that really works. And it's kind of the opposite of what one might think, devoting an hour a day and having a fixed schedule and all of this. Not everybody can meditate an hour a day. Not everybody can meditate a half hour a day. And not everybody even wants to meditate at all. I was like that. I had no desire whatsoever to meditate. But I was growing up in the 60s, and a lot of New Age and spirituality was floating around, and I saw my rebellious side that didn't want to get involved with any of that nonsense, and I thought, well, you don't have to be that biased against it, So for myself, I remember distinctly the very first time I ever meditated. I was like growing up in a crowd of really wild kids in high school. And I was known as Captain Trips because no matter how much psychedelics I took or intoxicated I got, I could always get everybody home and drive the car. And so Captain Trips was kind of cool guy. Far too cool to think about meditating. But one day, everybody was out of my father's apartment we're in the penthouse apartments overlooking the whole Malibu coast. And no one was home. And I thought, you shouldn't be so stubborn about this whole meditation thing and hate it so much. Life is more about, maybe more about something else and having wild times. So I plopped myself down right where I was, where I had that thought. And I happened to be in the doorway of my father's room in the hallway. And I just sat down and I said, okay, 5 minutes. You have to meditate 5 minutes and don't get up. So I sat there 5 minutes feeling extremely stupid. And it seemed like I was there for 5 hours. I was totally miserable, anxious, and felt really, really uncool. And when the 5 minutes was finally over, I said to myself, never gonna do that again. Of course, that was the challenge right there. Because as soon as I said that to myself, never gonna do that again, I thought, you're gonna do it again, and you're gonna do it every single day. And so what happened, I was 17, I decided, well, that's your limit. And you're going to do that 5 minutes until you start enjoying it. So I started meditating at the exact same time, 5 minutes a day. And I never missed. And that was all. That was my limit. And I had that agreement with myself. And then I kept it. And so the years went on. And after a couple of years, I started really enjoying my 5 minutes. I thought, well, maybe I can make it 10 minutes. And then I made it 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And pretty soon I was really getting into it. And no matter how wild the times I was having, by this time I had moved to the North Shore of Hawaii. I was surfing in the Sunset Beach Pipeline in Mauna Kea, Haleiwa, and just loving life, but I always liked to meditate. And it kept on. And I built a practice, eventually quit surfing because of my practice, and went to India and Nepal to get more serious. So what's the point here? Well, the whole point is to avoid the errors that most people make when they start meditating, is don't be aggressive. Be super, super easy on yourself. But at the same time, be very dedicated and serious. And the idea is to build a personal practice, is to make a practice that works for you. So we've all had very much different levels of instructions and stuff, but basically we want to do something that we're sure we can do. Because if we can't, it's worse than if we didn't start at all, to quit a practice. So my suggestion is to do what I did, because it works, and it can work for anybody. And that just start really, really, agree with yourself. Anybody can do this, even my cat or my dog. So I certainly can. And maybe do that. Start with 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day or something very, very modest. And another intimidating fact is that a lot of people will start, and time is an issue always. Almost always people start with too much time. Or if they have the right amount of time, they don't have a scheduled time for the meditation practice. by a scheduled time, I mean a time that you plug in and you actually know, well, I'm going to meditate. It's at 7 o'clock every night or 7 o'clock every morning or whatever the time is. You know you're going to be there for that meditation. And you know you're going to reschedule if something conflicts with that time. You're not going to let it pile up, a bunch of missing meditations. So that also works very well, because then people know when they can't get a hold of you. They won't try and bother you. When people know that you meditate from 6 to 7 every evening or 6 to 7 every morning, then they know that time's blocked out. They don't call you. They don't come over or anything. So it has practical advantages. When I was living in India and staying in Varanasi, it was kind of like the buzz of the town. We'll plug in at 4 o'clock because that's when all the yogis get on the airwaves. And it was kind of true. There was a kind of special time at that day, the later part of the afternoon, when it was kind of like a magic in the air that you could plug into. And Varanasi is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. And it's loaded with saints. They're all over the place. And yogis, and mystics, and marvelous people. And you could sit at 4 o'clock and sort of catch a wave with all of these vibes in the air. But we're not all living in Varanasi, so we have to make our own time. But if we do that, if we have a fixed time every day, it becomes like a mandala that all the deities know we're going to be showing up at that time, and they show up for us to meet us. So, and it also injects a little bit of discipline in our practice so that we're not sloppy. And so even if it's 5 minutes, which is a ridiculously short amount of time, but I did it. That's what my schedule was. And so you go, well, I'm going to meditate 5 minutes from 8 to 8:05, and that's it. So you avoid everything at around 8 o'clock, and you plug in from 8 to 8:05. Be as miserable as you can be. I mean, you can be really, really miserable for 5 minutes. Anybody can endure that. And then get up and be done with it. And the idea is, of course, that the nature of the mind is really quite an amazing spectacle. It's the greatest show on earth. And when you sit down for 5 minutes, once you get all of the crap out of your head, which might at 5 minutes a day take a very, very, very long time, but once it all kind of dissolves and the nature of the mind starts revealing itself to you, you kind of think, gee, this isn't so bad after all, I can kind of get into this. And then there's a turning point where you think, well, where instead of, after work I got to go meditate, really don't want to, I'd rather do something else. Instead of that, you're thinking, I hardly can wait to get home and meditate. and really get into it. I remember when early on in my practice, after a few years, I had a job weed whacking in a shopping mall on the leeward side of Oahu. And when my work was done, I only lived about 5 miles away. It would take me about 20 minutes, but I was so anxious to meditate, I would lock myself into the shed with the weed whackers and everything, meditate for about 2 hours before I even left the shopping mall. So you get addicted after a while, but it all has to start somewhere. You have to make a beginning. And it's just an investment into your heart and your soul and your mind, and a commitment to the fact that maybe there's some kind of truth that I haven't discovered yet. Because we're all so cool and we all know it all, right? And so if you, like as grand as all of the cosmos is, if you turn inside for just 5 minutes or whatever is comfortable, 1 minute. And you know you're really going to do it, and you turn inside. And you show a little belief in yourself. Well, then the God or inside you will not be so shy. And maybe he'll make friends with you.